my name is Stella, and today I'm going to be talking about something that I actually never planned on talking about ever, because the subject has been done a lot. There's already so many videos about it, but here I am about to do it anyway, just like most of my videos. And this will be coming from someone who has anxiety. It's something that I've been working on all my life, and although I have been able to get away with wearing alternative fashion for like the last 5 years of my life, I am still human, and I do still struggle sometimes. Well, most times, if I'm being honest. If I'm outside, chances are I'm not as happy as I could be because I don't like being outside. It's a problem, but I make do. It's all good. So first and foremost, I need to mention that if you do plan on wearing not necessarily Lolita, but really any standout fashion, you do need to accept the fact that people are going to stare. Not all people, but some people, and you will inevitably be judged by someone at some point. Some people will think that you're trying to grab attention. Some people may think that you're trying to pretend to be someone that you're not and that you're hiding the real you. And other people might just think that you're weird. And it could be strangers, your family, your friends, anyone. But what it all comes down to is if you feel like you can't handle that, I'm sorry to say this probably is not the fashion for you, unless you want to limit yourself to only dressing up indoors, which is also fine. There's nothing wrong with hiding yourself away like a little hermit crab. I myself think crabs are very, very cute. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with this aside from the fact that you are limiting yourself. And as a human being, you deserve more. So the real question is, how do you come to accept it? How do you gain that kind of confidence to just wear what you want outside and not care what anyone says or thinks? And the answer ultimately is quite simple. You just don't. You don't care. That's it. Now some people, they actually don't have a problem with this at all. They don't mind the attention, and as a child growing up, they probably built this like inner Pinterest board in their brain of like, where would I want quotes. But for others, it can be a really, really big problem, especially if they grew up in a household where it was embedded to them that looks matter, the things that you wear, that you say, that you do all matter. Anyone with judgmental parents or family, that plays a really big part into like your own mentality. And so there's this huge override of your own mental system that you have to really work on. And this is especially hard if you are, say, in middle school or high school still, because you're kind of placed in this position where you can't really help but care about what other people think or what your peers think, because although temporary, your peers are basically just your whole entire social pool. You don't have the freedom that you do as an adult to just say, I'm not going to deal with this, I'm not going to see you anymore. And this was actually me. Not in regards to Lolita, but just in general. Makeup, anything other than jeans and a tee, alternate hairstyles. Now, I moved around a lot as a kid, but I was in Orange County when I was going to high school. And my school pretty much primarily consisted of a bunch of white folks who basically looked like they exclusively shopped at the Gap or Old Navy. And naturally at this time, my anxiety, which I didn't understand at the time, was rampant. I didn't want to stand out one little bit, even though deep down inside, it was my innermost desire to look like Amy Lee or Alice Cullen. But what really helped me the most was getting away from that environment and taking time for myself. I did actually need the physical space away from my peers. It wasn't about impressing others anymore. It was simply living for myself and find something that I felt really, really fit me. And when you find something that brings you so much happiness and it's not hurting anyone, it becomes a lot easier. In theory. Now, when I first stepped outside my house in a petticoat and a cotton candy colored wig, I did suddenly realize this is gonna take some practice. Wearing it around the house was all good and well, but as soon as I stepped outdoors into the real world, my confidence shot down like so hard. Pop. So this again brings me back to my first point. It's one thing to say that you're okay with people staring at you, judging you, but it is another thing to experience it and actually make peace with it. So in my case, being outside in general, I already, like, by default feel outside of my comfort zone. In addition to that, dressing in a way where I stand out a little bit more brings me even higher outside of my comfort zone. So my way around this was basically trying to figure out how to level the playing field. I had to find a way to trick my mind into thinking I wasn't all the way out here, I was down here with everyone else. I'm a human just like everyone else, wearing clothes just like everyone else, and it is my right to exist like everyone else. However anyone else feels when they see me is not my responsibility. And if they happen to think I'm some degenerate for some reason, that's entirely on them. Again, it has nothing to do with me, but quite frankly, if they do come to that conclusion, it says a lot more about them and what their mind is like. And I have the right to acknowledge someone if they're being polite. And I also have the right to decide that they are not worthy of my time if I don't think so. I am no different than all these people who just happen to decide not to wear a petticoat on this day. Now, it takes practice for sure, but over time you start to get used to it. Now, another way I've heard it being explained, leveling out the playing field if you're out of your comfort zone, is to pretend that you're at a party of celebrities. Well, first off, pretend that you care about celebrities, and then pretend that you're at a party with them. So you're there and you're not a celeb, you're not a model, you're not acting in any movies, any shows, you're not a musician, you haven't even been on a reality show, like, ever. I think it's safe to say that you would feel just a little bit outside your comfort zone at least, but it's all okay. You are there and you deserve to be there. Just because your situation is a little bit different does not mean that you are any lesser. You are all equal. But again, it's one thing to say it, it's a whole other thing entirely to feel it. And this is where the whole fake it till you make it comes into play. Now, the goal isn't to trick other people into thinking that you're someone that you're not. That's not what we're going for. We're not liars. I think the whole point of fake it till you make it is to trick yourself and to try and build your own confidence. Practice, practice, practice that you have it, and then eventually it'll come. So find someone who you really admire, who you think has a lot of this confidence. And I mean like genuine confidence. So I'm going to take a moment here to point out some examples, like say Kylie Jenner. No hate, no shade, but you can tell by looking at her that she is kind of the embodiment of insecurity. But let's go ahead and look over at someone like Paris Hilton. She was hated and dragged by the media for several years, but she always stuck to her shtick. However unpractical it might have been. She's the kind of person where if she makes a mistake, embarrassment isn't really gonna haunt her for like the rest of her day. In fact, if anything, she made that mistake on purpose. And she doesn't really care if you respect her or not because she knows what she's about, she knows what she's worth. That's the kind of vibe that I pick off of her, and that's the kind of vibe that I'm always hoping to have for myself. It is okay to look to others and use them as a textbook to build that self-confidence for yourself. So if you want to use, say, Momoko from Kamikaze Girls, that's alright. And you don't need to try and embody her entirely. We all know she wasn't necessarily the best person, but you can go ahead and pick and choose from her character the elements that do inspire you. The confidence to wear something different, to travel on a train by yourself, being creative when it comes to fixing up your own clothes. You pick and choose and play pretend that you have all these qualities. And at some point, before you know it, you aren't really playing anymore. By staying positive and continuously telling yourself that you are these things, not that you're getting them, but you already are, you are essentially manifesting them into your own being. So if any of you are wondering, I personally have looked to early 90s RuPaul for my own emotional support and, confidence boost. Yes, I'm talking supermodel. I'm talking it don't matter what you do because everything looks good on you. For me, as a child, RuPaul was proof that whatever race, whatever gender, whatever your sexual orientation, however tall you might be, you can do exactly what you want to do and you can make it look good. RuPaul is that true queen embodiment that I strive for whenever I am in doubt. I also sometimes like to go back and rewatch interviews of assholes trying to get Dolly Parton to explain why she is the way that she is.
Do you ever feel that you're a joke, that people make fun of you?
Oh, I know they make fun of me. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I can change it at any time. Or I make more jokes about myself than anybody.
The goal, ideally, I think, is to be able to take it like Dolly Parton does. So putting all of that aside, there are some actual basic tips that I have, which if you're watching this, probably you've already heard of them before. And number one is very simple. You will not feel confident unless you are wearing something that you feel comfortable in. And this means look-wise, but it also means physically. Clothes that are ill-fitting are very noticeable, most especially to yourself. I've gained quite a bit of weight over my years in Lolita, and while I could squeeze myself into certain dresses, doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna look good in them. Like, even while wearing them indoors, I still felt like nervous. I was just constantly adjusting my outfit in some way. And it doesn't have to be a dress too. It could be like an accessory that's just really finicky that you always feel you have to like readjust. But with sizes, it's also been vice versa. I've had dresses that are too big and they make me feel so frumpy. So I've been on all ends. I've sold things for being too big, too wonky, too small. It happens and it's okay. But definitely, I think the main focus of Lolita should be trying to get stuff that really fits you well, makes you feel good about yourself. And in addition to that, it should be stuff that you really love wearing. Colors that really speak to you. You want to love every little thing about your cord. You don't want to be worrying about if your wig is too shiny, if your socks are going to be rolling down your thighs, or if your lashes are going to go flying off. These are all little distractions that are going to really affect how you wear Lolita outdoors. Again, when you walk out the door, you should feel really proud of what you're wearing. Now, in addition to that, I also want to mention something else, and this has to do with matching entirely. If you have a jacket or shoes or a bag that doesn't really match the rest of your cord, but it's all you have, do not let that hold you back. Please don't. A stranger is not going to be nearly as nitpicky as a Lolita is. And most Lolitas understand the necessity of practicality. It's very important and it's really not a big deal. So if you're going on a long walk, you wear those comfy shoes and you feel good in them. Number two is that as much as you love the idea of starting out as OTT, whatever, it really might be beneficial to start small. One, because it gives you more time to work up and adjust and get used to wearing more and more things. Again, the more OTT you are, the more you're going to stand out. So starting with maybe one or two elements and then adding on from there, I think is really helpful. I'm pretty sure that, not all, but for most people, walking out the door into something super extravagant from the start, likely you will feel like you're wearing a costume. Not because it is a costume, but just because you aren't used to it. Again, it's going to be like, this is new, this is different. So I started out by wearing really small bows in my hair and then kind of making them a little bit bigger, more showy. I had lots of little accessories. And then I moved on to wearing natural colored wigs. And then certain dresses that passed as normie dresses without petticoats, usually from Innocent World because those are what usually pass for normie. And then I moved to very simple classic stuff, nothing outlandish. And then I moved to more sweet inspired classic stuff. And then I immediately went to sweet. And from there, I eventually kind of did OTT sweet. And a great thing about this is that even though in my head I wanted everything all at once, I did get to slowly build up my wardrobe steadily over time, and I was able to find way to make uses of the things that I did have in my closet before having to include them in a full Lolita cord. So for tip number 3, basically, if you have a good friend who is on board with your fashion, it's always easier to step outside with them. There's a whole saying, strength in numbers, and that's why meetups are so great. Now for me, as a lone Lolita, I still have felt very supported from my boyfriend and having him go out with me. I have still gotten catcalled, but there is an added layer of protection, and the people who have approached me while he's been out with me have all pretty much been positive. And I really do think that more negative folk who want to bother me are less inclined to do that with him there. So number 4, I'm going to say beforehand, it's pretty hard because we're all human. We're all in our heads and it's not always fun, but you have to recognize that no one cares about you more than you do. The people that you meet in a shop or on a street, they're gonna be part of your life for what, like a few seconds, maybe a few minutes at most. In the grand scheme of time, why does it matter? They're gonna notice you, quickly come to their conclusion. It could be good, it could be bad, and then they're gonna forget about it and move on with their day. And if you think that they're gonna continue thinking about you for the rest of their day, you really need to get out of your own head. Like, find a way to distract yourself. Maybe get a treat, or look on your phone, or talk to your friends. And if a stranger happens to approach you and they say something positive, that's great. If they have something negative to say, that sucks. But in that case, they aren't worth any of your time. Because really, at the end of the day, it is just clothing. And again, if someone has a problem with clothes, something as silly and simple as clothes, that is indicative of them and entirely irrelevant to you. So no, do not give them any of your attention or your energy. They do not deserve it. And I guarantee you, in a few minutes, they're going to forget about you, and then they're going to look for their next target. At some point before the end of the day, they're probably going to try and start shit with someone else, rinse and repeat. So really, best thing to do, just let them be. So with all that being said, before I end this video, I do want to say that self-love, unfortunately, isn't something that comes easy to most people. But luckily, it is something that can be learned. Maybe in the future, I'll make a video about that too. I don't know. But if you are struggling with that, I would highly suggest you look into that. It is very important to take care of yourself. The reality of the world is that even outside of Lolita, whatever you're wearing, however you dress, however you look, you will be judged at some point. You will be critiqued. Some people aren't gonna like you just because. Others will make false assumptions about you. However right or wrong, they're going to do that entirely based on your appearance. That is the world that we live in, and that's how we are as humans. And I do say we as a whole because I know that most of us try to aim to be good, but again, we all make initial judgments, and they don't have to be negative. They could be good, but it does happen regardless. So what I'm saying is that if you're gonna get judged regardless, do what makes you happy. So if you made it this far into the video and you are someone who happens to be full of confidence and you have some tips that I didn't mention, please leave it in the comments. I think it's always great to share new ideas and different opinions. More advice, more better. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and go now. So thanks for watching if you watched, and I will see you next time. Bye!